to be the Persian Gulf over here. All right, so you see Persian Gulf. This is all Iran. And then right here, this teeny tiny little island here. This is Karg Island. You see those right there? These are all, places where oil is stored. Karg Island is, I mean, if there was an Achilles heel for all of Iran's oil infrastructure, it would be Karg Island. It processes something like 80 to 90% of their oil. And the President Trump, has said that they just struck the island and they took out all the military installations. They left the oil infrastructure intact. But if the Strait of Hormuz, which is right down here, this is Karg Island way up here, and then this is the Strait of Hormuz. If the Strait of Hormuz isn't reopened, then, the oil infrastructure on Karg Island may be struck next. So we're going to be talking to some experts coming up on Stay Tuned. Hope you tune in. Big developments happening right now in the Middle East. We just got word that the United States has bombed all the military installations, according to the president, of this place called Karg Island. Karg Island is super important geographically, strategically. All right, so this is the Middle East, right? This is going to be the Persian Gulf. Perfect. Hey, what's up, guys? All right. Dun, 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 dun. Cat's eye. Hello, everybody. All right, we got all kinds of stuff happening right now. If you don't mind, I'm going to read this real fast. But if you're just tuning in, hi, welcome. We're about to do the news, and right before we are doing the news, we're updating a lot of the show with the latest out of Iran. The president just announced that the United States has taken out all of the military installations on this place called Karg Island. Karg Island is very, very important strategically, which is a small, let's see. The president of Karg Island. Runs. Oh, imagine all the States, Texas, Florida, Louisiana. One place. France. That is what. Not to go after that change today, but for recent decisive. Not all of it. It's all happening with the United States Marines by the thousands. Pentagon's 6. And soon. If his order. Secretary. What is Pete Hegseth saying in this shot? And Secretary. Listing. 10 strikes. Got it. All good. All right. A1 should be good to go, and then we go into Kira's package, right? Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. Man, we got some busyness today. Let me just post this because I'm trying to post more to TikTok, where I think you guys are already at. Well, some people are there. Let's see here. All right. Big strike in Iran. What will it do? Will it be enough to, what should I put here? Will it be enough to reopen the Strait of Hormuz? How do you spell Hormuz? U-Z, right? H-O-R. M-U-Z, got it. That's what I thought. Strait. Tune in. There we go. All right, post. Fire and forget, right? Okay, sorry guys. Let's see. What is everybody, who's here first of all? SML, hello, great to see you. Hi, what's up? Oh, Hi is on YouTube today. Nice to see you. State of Maryland, 333 compared to 2 weeks ago. It was 298. Wow. Yeah, it's really interesting. Nikki Hawks. So a lot of people are saying, look, what's happening right now in the Middle East, we don't get our oil from there. We get very, very little oil from the Persian Gulf. We are now oil exporters, and the people that are most affected are going to be China, India, and a lot of the Gulf states. But for the most part, we don't see a lot of imports. So there is some insulation that the United States has from the media disruption of what's happening in Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. But that doesn't necessarily mean the entire world is not going to be thrown into chaos over supply chain disruptions. I mean, just looking at how much oil a lot of these countries have left, I think like India has something like less than a month of reserves if they are completely shut off from oil. So a lot of things to consider, and we're going to be diving into that with a bunch of experts. Let's see, gas prices are now $4.20, says David Gonzalez. Somebody laughed at the price, which, you know, and then somebody else brought up that it's Friday the 13th. And then Hi is also on Twitch. Let's see, SML on TikTok. Spiro is here as well. What up, Spiro? Okay, let me just jump in and we're gonna see. We're gonna talk to Robert McNally. He's a former energy advisor to President George W. Bush. He wrote a book on the history and future of boom-bust oil prices, so we're going to be talking to him. Island, put this. Okay, let's see. Flip, what's up? Hi, Purple. Back to you. What's up, Ming? A lot of people are happy it's Friday. Let's see. Oh, did it go up? Okay. If you did, can you just, you know, I don't know, comment or something so the algorithm does the algorithm thing? This stuff is hard. It's hard to do the social stuff, but also keep track of everything that's happening in the world, and then also make sure that our show is timely and accurate, and then also that we're well enough researched that we can ask questions that make this all make sense to everyone. It's a lot, but we're doing it. We're also going to be talking about mines in the Strait of Hormuz. The question is, like, maybe there aren't as many mines as we thought. Sounded like today there were some reports that Iran was telling ships that are carrying oil bound for China and are purchasing it in Chinese currency that they could proceed through the Strait of Hormuz. So mines, no mines? We don't know. Monitor is right here. This is iNews right here. iNews is how we write the scripts for the show. And in about 3 minutes, we are going to be off to the races. If you're just joining us, this is Stay Tuned Now at NBC News. We are on the Universal Studios lot. Part of the team is in New York. We are monitoring the very latest all across the NBC News network. That's going to be a very robust reporting team tonight. We've got Keir Simmons. He's out in Dubai. He's reporting on this latest with Karg Island. I don't know if you guys have heard, but the president just announced this massive strike on this island called Karg Island, and most Americans have probably never heard of it. Most military planners for the Middle East, they definitely have. Karg Island is a critical, like it is like the spine of Iran's oil infrastructure. And it sounds like the United States has struck all the military targets there on the same day that they're saying that they're sending thousands of Marines over to the Middle East. But they haven't struck the oil facilities yet. And unless, Hormuz is reopened, the president is threatening maybe that's going to change. So will that change the direction of the war? I don't know, but we're going to be talking to some really smart people about that. You know what, JFK? I do too. That's exactly where I stand. I did not eat lunch today. I am fasting. Let's see, 90 seconds. Here we go. All right, Trish. We're going to give you all the latest coming up here. Jock, it's a war. Right? Cool. Can you, we still have a little bit of time. All right, we still have a little bit of time. We're going straight in, so there's no cold open today. This is the graphic. Yeah, it's Iran. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to put you right here. The full show will pop up in about 30 seconds. Have a good show, everybody. Have a good show, SML. Have a good show. Have a good show, Big Mike. Have a good show. Have a good show, Todd. Good show, Mao. Let's go. "15 seconds. Here we go. 5 seconds.
4, 3.
We start tonight with some big breaking news in the war with Iran, which continues to heat up, with the president just announcing that the United States has bombed military targets on Karg Island. That is this little island right off the coast of Iran, and it is so important to Iran's entire oil infrastructure. Imagine all the oil ports in the United States, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, all in one place. That is what Karg is to Iran. And for nearly 2 weeks, the United States chose not to go after it with strikes. That changed tonight, according to the president, but not all of it. Trump says in a Truth Social post, quote, "For reasons of decency, I have chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island." This is all happening with the U.S. now sending in Marines by the thousands. Tonight, we are learning the Pentagon is deploying nearly 5,000 more Marines and sailors to the Middle East. And this comes as the president and the Pentagon say that they are investigating the deaths of 6 crew members who were killed after a United States refueling plane went down in Iraq yesterday. Overnight, the president urged people to, quote, Watch what happens in the war today, while calling on Iran's leadership and saying that they were deranged scumbags. And today, in an interview with Fox News Radio, Trump once again suggested that the war in Iran could end soon, all at his order.
When are you going to know when it's over?
When I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones.
Meanwhile, the defense secretary going over another day of intense strikes.
Today will be, yet again, the highest volume of strikes that America has put over the skies of Iran and Tehran.
And in the aftermath, you can see rescue workers attempting to remove rubble after a strike today. The blast jarring cars, throwing out windows, scattering debris everywhere. We're also seeing crazy scenes like a drone crashing into a warehouse in Iraq, sending debris flying in the air. Iraqi officials say no one was there at the time. All these attacks ramping up across the Middle East. And there's concern about how it's going to be affecting oil prices. That is growing as people see that at the pump. With the Strait of Hormuz closed, the supply is being squeezed across the globe. Earlier, the United States eased sanctions on Russian oil to try to stabilize the markets. But oil finished the day above $103 a barrel. That is the highest end-of-day price since 2002. NBC's Keir Simmons has more.
Tonight, as Iran attacks multiple oil tankers in an effort to drive up oil prices, the growing crisis. How will ships pass safely through the Strait of Hormuz?
The only thing preventing commercial traffic and flow through the straits right now, which there is some through the straits, is Iran.
The U.S. destroying Iranian boats that could place mines in the strait. But its closure already sending oil prices up to $99 a barrel. The average U.S. price at the pump now $3.63 a gallon. Economists warning about impacts if the closure lasts more than 2 months.
Potentially some knock-on effects from higher transportation costs, higher food prices.
All while Iran is still targeting its Arab neighbors, including firing drones at civilian targets in Dubai, like this tower in the city's financial district today, though more than 90% of Iranian missiles and drones have been intercepted here.
How long can the UAE sustain this resistance?
The UAE is strong. The UAE is no easy prey.
Tonight's senior UAE minister, Lana Nusayba, condemning Iran.
We will not respond to bullying by backing down.
And let's bring in NBC's Keir Simmons, who's in Dubai right now. Keir, what more do we know about this strike on Karg Island?
So President Trump announced it tonight. Karg Island is described as a jewel in the crown of the Iranian oil industry. Now, we should hastily say, Gadi, that President Trump is saying he hasn't hit the oil infrastructure. It is said that around 90% of Iran's oil is piped or shipped, if you like, from that island, piped through that island, if you like. And so it obviously is crucial. And yet he said he hasn't hit that piece of it now. It is said that the island is controlled by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, which is, of course, that military piece of the Iranian regime that dominates and is said to have selected been the backers for the new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, the son of the killed supreme leader, killed in this war just a few weeks ago. So it is an IRG stronghold. It is also strategic. It is in the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, that location where there are tankers waiting, where there are many other countries with oil facilities, and of course, not too far away, the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran is controlling and saying that ships can't pass, or certainly not ships that are seen as from countries that are adversaries to Iran. And that is, as you know, Gadi, having a huge effect on the world economy. So in a sense, what President Trump is saying here is, and he said, we will attack the oil infrastructure on the island if we need to, if Iran doesn't back down. In a sense, what President Trump is saying here is, Iran, you are conducting economic warfare. We can conduct economic warfare against you.
And when it comes to the White House, when it comes to all of this, you know, we heard it said yesterday, there's no such thing as a coincidence. This happens on the same day as we are hearing this pretty massive deployment of Marines to the area. Now, obviously, we don't know what their plans are, what their orders are going to be, but historically, in large sea-to-land operations, Marines are usually the first one in, right? So what should we be reading into this, or at least what do you think the Iranians right now, seeing both of these things happening, will read into this?
Well, that's a great question, because I think a lot of what is happening is about how will the Iranians perceive this? How can we, this is speaking, if you like, from the Washington perspective, from the Trump administration perspective, how can we persuade the Iranians that we have escalation dominance, that we are going to be able to ramp things up further and further and further, and that they may as well capitulate now. Now, you're right, Marines, and some of these Marines, according to reports coming in, for example, from Asia, from a deployment there, you're right that they could be used, for example, as the tip of the spear in some kind of a boots on the ground effort to control, for example, the Strait of Hormuz. So yes, they could be used that way, but they could also be used they could be being used to send a signal, and there may also be some level of rotation here, replacing others. The crucial thing here, though, with all of this, Gadi, is again that question of whether Iran will back down if America shows it enough force and threatens enough force. And the challenge for President Trump, and it's a challenge for leaders, and particularly military leaders, as far back as history goes, is that once you show and threaten that you can take action, you then are on the edge of taking action. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, in the United States, look, we're horrible at geography, right? And so a lot of people are going to be looking up where Kharg Island is, looking into the infrastructure there and saying, oh, wow, yeah, this changes everything. You know, just like the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian war planners have known that the Strait of Hormuz is the Achilles heel to so much of the global supply of oil. They also know that Kharg Island is probably their Achilles heel, right? Do you think that there could be any surprises in store here?
Well, the issue here is the Iranian regime going to feel like it needs to give up because the US and Israel together are suggesting that they could cut off the Iranian regime's supply of money, which is mostly through oil. And I think that is a big question mark, even while these threats are being made by President Trump, because the regime, frankly, feels like it's in a fight for its survival. And a regime like that is not necessarily going to think that if it backs down, that will be an advantage for it. Because remember that this regime, from its perspective, not only sees the attacks from the US, but it also sees the threat of protests by its own people. And if it looks weak in its consideration, that can be an issue further down the line. So there are calculations being made by Iranian regime leaders. And also remember, a new supreme leader in his mid-50s, fairly untested. He's said to have advised his dad, but, you know, okay, he lost many members of his family and is said to be injured, according to Secretary Hegseth. That whole calculation being made by that leader and those leaders is what the US is trying to judge, and it's very, very difficult, and there's no guarantee that Iran is going to raise the white flag any more than it has done in the past 2 weeks or the past 2 months.
Yeah, but like you said, I mean, it seems like tonight there's going to be a lot of recalculating by militaries on all sides here. Keir Simmons, incredible reporting. Thank you so much. And joining us now is Robert McNally, the former energy advisor to President George W. Bush. He's also the founder and president of the Rapidan Energy Group and author of Crude Volatility, the History and Future of Boom-Bust Oil Prices. Thank you so much for being with us, Robert. Kharg Island, can you put this in perspective for us? What does this island mean to Iran?
It means everything. Kharg Island is a 5-mile-long island that has a terminal, an oil terminal on it, and Iran exports 90% of its oil from that island. So it's by far the crown jewel. It is the source of Iran's foreign revenue, and upon which the IRGC, the regime, depends. So it's the whole ball of wax, if you will.
And again, you know, for a lot of people here in the United States, this is okay, we now know they have a choke point, but this is something that the Iranians have known for quite some time. Are you surprised at this announcement that we've taken out all the military installations there, according to the president? Or did you think this was a long time coming here?
Well, we're not surprised at all. My team and I saw this coming months ago and mapped it all out. But what we're doing now is seeing an escalation. So if we step back for a second, Gadi, while this is already the largest oil disruption in history, 2 times bigger than the last one, so far, believe it or not, both sides have been showing restraint. Neither side has attacked each other's critical energy infrastructure, crown jewels, which, if attacked, would send oil prices even higher and perhaps lengthen the damage. So there's been restraint so far. And the president tonight is by attacking military facilities. On this island, they also have missile bases and boats. So the military uses it to harass shipping. So it has those targets. He hit those. And he's basically saying, if you don't stop crimping the world's energy artery, Iran, I will smash your crown jewel.
There's been restraint, as you just mentioned, and then there's also been easing of some sanctions on things like Russian oil, with the president saying that he was hoping that this would also stabilize energy markets. Russia's a huge oil exporter. The price of oil going up, it has already helped them, right? And I imagine the Chinese are going to be looking to supplement a lot of their supply that's being cut off here from Russia, too. I got to ask, like, is this a huge boon for Russia right now across the board?
You know, Russia's enjoying much higher revenue, no question. And they were hurting just before this. They were really suffering in their revenues. Their oil revenues were going down. But you know what? If you're Vladimir Putin, you may be enjoying the cash now, but this isn't good for you long term. If Iran emerges from this with a government that's more aligned to the U.S., and the West, very bad for Russia. Iran's a huge ally of Putin. So I think Putin's trying to stop this. Yeah, he's enjoying the cash. But with escalation, the United States has military dominance here. Iran could end up not a friend of Russia's, and that's not a good day or outlook for Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, 2 things true at the same time there. We also keep hearing reports of gas prices here at home. I mean, you just go to the pump and you see it's getting much more expensive. On the other hand, we are hearing that the United States doesn't really get much oil from the Persian Gulf these days, and that the United States is insulated from what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, at least when it comes to oil. How can both of those be true at the same time?
You know, they are. The weird thing is, as the world's largest producer, and we're an exporter, our economy broadly is insulated. You know, our trade deficit is not hurt by this. However, from the perspective of you, me, and every consumer who has to tank up, look, we all ride the same Space Mountain roller coaster when it comes to prices. Every person on the planet faces the same price in oil. So consumers get walloped, even though our broader economy, the oil industry, investors, associated businesses, they're helped out somewhat.
Yeah, Space Mountain, where the lights are off and you have no idea where you're going, is a very apt description of what this feels like. What is your understanding right now of the actual damage to infrastructure on natural gas and oil facilities? We see strikes happening all throughout the Gulf and all throughout the Middle East. Have we felt, do you think that the markets have a good idea of what the long-term implications are months from now on this?
They're starting to come to grips with that. You know, so far, the good news is so far, there hasn't been material damage to key infrastructure. We're shutting down facilities. The world's largest LNG facility shut down. Oil producers are shutting down their fields. Those things can come back. There's going to be some unclogging. Those can come back. What you don't want to see is this escalate to we start attacking each other's facilities where you need months, if not longer, to repair. Then you have an order of magnitude worsening in this crisis. But you know, Gadi, before this, if you had said to somebody, we're going to go to war with Iran and they're going to shut the Strait of Hormuz for more than 2 days, they would tell you you're crazy. I know, because they told me I was crazy when I said that. So we're already 13 days longer than people thought it could last. And I think people are just coming to terms that Hormuz could be shut another couple of weeks. Forget about we start blowing up the major infrastructure.
Do you think, real fast, do you think that this trade for the Karg Island for the Strait of Hormuz is going to happen realistically?
Well, look, I'm hoping that we'll have de-escalation at some point. The United States does have military escalation dominance, and the regime in Tehran wants to survive. So one of two things are going to happen by Sunday night. You're going to see probably some ceasefire news, back channel negotiations. That could happen. I'm not aware of it, but that could happen because the president's escalating here. Or we're going to have a pretty big open in the Asian trading, and oil prices will go a lot harder as the market starts to price in a new level of escalation. So it's going to get a lot better or a lot worse here shortly.
Yeah, your predictions will be ringing in my head all weekend. Bob McNally, thank you so very much for all of that. And speaking of oil and shipping, the biggest fear right now for the oil markets is the Strait of Hormuz turning into a minefield. With such tight shipping lanes and shallow water, things get very, very tricky for any ships trying to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. To help us break this down, let's bring in a New York Times Pentagon reporter and former EOD officer in the U.S. Navy, co-author of this fascinating article, How Iran's Naval Mines Work, John Ismay. John, thank you so much for being with us. Your journalism on this has been incredible. First off, there has been so much back and forth over what we're seeing right now between the Strait of Hormuz and now Karg Island. I just asked Robert if he thought that this trade would work strategically. What do you think?
Well, I think the U.S. has a real challenge for itself in trying to safely navigate the Strait of Hormuz. I think I've transited through the Strait of Hormuz 5 or 6 times as ship's company on a warship, and it was always a little tense, and that's not with any heightened threat of any kind. So I think right now all the things that I was trained on about Iranian anti-ship cruise missiles, the anti-ship mine threat is very real, and Iran's starting to use those missiles to target merchant ships in the area.
We're getting conflicting reports. We're seeing conflicting reports about what is exactly hitting some of these ships. There have been not autonomous, but remote-controlled boats, possibly drones. And then there are these reports of mines, while at the same time, we're hearing reports that Chinese ships may be allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Are there mines right now in the Strait of Hormuz? And if there are, how do you start mine sweeping?
Well, I believe we've reported that U.S. intelligence officials have said there are a number of mines in the water. But the first part of any mine clearance operation is to do an underwater survey. And in the best circumstance, you're not being shot at while you do it. So the Navy has invested heavily in devices called autonomous underwater vehicles. These look like small torpedoes that have side scan sonar devices on them. They can be programmed with a grid to search, and they can very quickly, basically like mowing a lawn, going back and forth until they've covered the entire search area. And they can do it a lot better than we could by towing such devices, even 10, 20 years ago. So that data can be very quickly stitched together by software so that once the AUV is recovered onto a boat, a data cable can be connected, all that information can be extracted from the device, and then very quickly you can see an entire picture at one glance of the area view just searched. And based on what you see there, then you will identify objects that are of potential concern, and then you would go back and investigate those with another type of robotic device called a remote operated vehicle, or you could splash human divers with handheld sonar devices to locate those items and inspect much more closely.
Everything that you're describing there, it sounds like days, weeks, possibly longer, no?
Yeah, it doesn't go quickly, and as the search area increases in size, your search time gets just that much longer. So I think that the ship that crashed into the Key Bridge in Baltimore might offer some sort of idea of how this could go. My understanding is that once the bodies of people who were lost on the bridge were recovered, there was an extensive survey done of the wreckage, and then salvors went about clearing a channel into the harbor and out of the harbor. And then you could reestablish commerce, you could reestablish marine traffic. And once you had those cleared lanes, the salvors could go ahead and try to clear the rest of the wreckage. So in order to reestablish commerce, you don't have to clear every last mine out of the Straits or out of the Persian Gulf right away, as long as you can establish clear lanes. And depending on how many mines have been laid and where, you might only have to do that survey to confirm that there are no suspect objects in those lanes, and then you can go about your way and then worry about locating and destroying the mines later.
Iran's war planners, they've always known what the Strait of Hormuz represents, and we're also seeing this new type of asymmetric warfare at sea, the underwater, autonomous drones, the drones in the sky. You've got remote-controlled fast boats. We've seen those videos of the tunnels showing fast boat after fast boat in Iran. We have no idea where that is. I do want to ask, as somebody that's transited this area, you know the Iranian coast, the high cliffs at some points, of the high mountains. What do you think is hiding in the Iranian coastline right now?
I think the first thing to know is there's a lot of coastline. And the larger that area is to monitor, the much greater challenge it is to try to have persistent overhead surveillance with drones or manned aircraft to try to establish where things are, what's moved recently, and what might look like something you want to take a closer look at. So really, all the things you mentioned, I think, are potentially there. The hard part is to try to establish those locations over hundreds of miles of coastline.
And really fast, I want to ask you about some of the Marines that are headed that way. I believe that USS Tripoli is now making its way pretty quick, as fast as they can, from the Pacific over to the Middle East. And looking at the Tripoli, I mean, this is it looks like an aircraft carrier. I know technically it kind of is, but it's also an amphibious ship where it could get very close to the coastline and launch helicopters, launch those F-35Bs. What do you think, what role do you think that a expeditionary force or possibly the Tripoli would have in a place like the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, I think that it's less about the Strait of Hormuz in particular and more about simply having a force of, say, 1,200 Marines who you can land on any beach you want to, or almost any beach. An amphibious assault ship like the Tripoli, as you can see, it does have a flat deck, sort of like a aircraft carrier, and it does carry those aircraft you mentioned, carry Ospreys, F-35Bs. So it can do offensive operations. And then in the stern of the ship, there's a door that lowers down into the water. And there's a big area, sort of cavernous area in there called a well deck. And in there you could have armored landing vehicles, you could have hovercraft, you could have small boats of different kinds. And you have a bunch of different ways of getting those Marines ashore, especially thanks to the Osprey tilt rotor aircraft, really wherever you want, whenever you want. So I think it makes, the Pentagon could be looking at this as sort of a force held in ready reserve if something happens and they need a ground assault force somewhere very quickly. So I don't think that the presence of these ships is about the Strait of Hormuz as much as it is, as a backup in case you had an aircraft go down, you need the aircrew recovered. These Marines are trained to do missions like that.
You're important. Your perspective on this is always so important. John, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. And turning now to the aftermath of 2 attacks on U.S. soil that are now being investigated by the FBI in Michigan. We are getting major developments about the suspect who reportedly drove a truck into a synagogue yesterday. It turns out he is a naturalized citizen originally from Lebanon. And then this video, just 2 days before the attack, it allegedly shows him walking in to go buy some fireworks, go buy thousands of dollars, $2,000 worth of explosive. And after lots of confusion about how yesterday unfolded and particularly how the suspect died, the FBI just provided this play-by-play earlier this evening. Take a listen.
At approximately 12:19 p.m., Ghazali drives his vehicle into door 5 on the southeast corner of the building, hitting a security guard on his way in. At approximately 12:20, Ghazali's vehicle gets jammed between hallway walls, and he begins firing through the windshield of his vehicle. And at this point, Ghazali is unable to extract himself due to the vehicle being jammed in the hallway. At approximately 12:22 p.m., a second security officer engages Ghazali in a gunfight from the front of the vehicle. And soon thereafter, Ghazali's vehicle, his engine compartment, catches on fire, and at some point during the gunfight, Ghazali suffers a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head.
Meanwhile, out in Virginia, the deadly shooting at Old Dominion University is now being investigated as an act of terrorism. Authorities say that the suspect was on supervised release after being convicted of helping ISIS years ago when he targeted a classroom full of ROTC students. Now let's get over to NBC's Ryan Nobles in Virginia. Ryan, the suspect was previously convicted of supporting ISIS. Like, what else do we know about his past, and how did he get a gun?
Yeah, we're learning a lot in just the last 24 hours, Gotti. First, to answer your second question about how he got that gun, in fact, the man who allegedly gave him the gun is now under arrest and facing perhaps as many as 3 decades in prison. The Department of Justice said that this man stole a gun and then met up with the suspect, Mohammed Jallah, last night. Cell phone data shows that Jallah was at his house. The gun that the individual used to create the shooting is now connected to this man who's been arrested. And so that's just part of how he was able to obtain a firearm. Remember, that was a big question because he was under supervised release and was a convicted felon and shouldn't have been able to buy a gun. Now, Jallah's past is very checkered. He pled guilty to attempting to materially support ISIS, a terror group, and was supposed to spend 11 years in prison, but was released in 2024. So there's a lot of reasons why officials believe that there's a nexus to terrorism here. They haven't officially declared it so, but all the signs are there.
I totally see that. And real fast, the people that stopped him, I mean, they're victims in this case. Who were they, and how were they able to take him down?
Mm-hmm. So this was a classroom of ROTC cadets. These were young men and women learning to become Army officers, and they responded immediately. They jumped on the man. We're told that one of the cadets actually stabbed the man, which led to him dying, but it certainly neutralized the situation. I spoke to the governor of Virginia today. She called them heroes. She said that there could have been a much greater loss of life had it not been for their heroic and swift action. But this is still going to be something that's going to linger and affect this campus and the folks that were in that classroom for some time to come, Gotti.
Yeah, it sure will. Ryan Nobles, thank you so much. And let's get out to NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster, who has all the latest about the synagogue attack in Michigan. Shaquille?
Good evening, Gotti. And one thing that was abundantly clear in that press conference with the FBI, with the sheriff, with members of other law enforcement agencies is that this investigation is just at the beginning stages. You heard them repeatedly after multiple questions emphasize that they don't want to speculate on any potential motive for this attack, even as they revealed new details about exactly what took place. We learned for the first time a full timeline of what happened in the hours before that attack. We learned that the suspect apparently drove to the synagogue, sat in the parking lot for nearly 2.5 hours before police say he drove in through the door into a hallway and then engaged in a gunfight with members of that security team, the private security that was on site there. Remember, all of this taking place as nearly 140 students were inside, preschool students, officials say between the ages of 0 and 5. Those students ultimately evacuated. But the new detail that we also learned is what was in the bed of this suspect's vehicle. This Ford F-150, a pickup truck, officials saying saying that in the back of that truck, you had gas canisters, you had commercial-grade fireworks, essentially explosives. That helps explain what we learned in terms of the amount of law enforcement officers that ended up hospitalized after this incident, rushed to the hospital because of smoke inhalation. We learned that the number, instead of being 30, as we reported yesterday, it was now 61 members of law enforcement. Something else that we've heard, not just from those officials, but also the governor of Michigan, also first responders in my conversations with them, is just exactly how close this came to being something so much worse. I want you to listen to a little bit of my conversation with a firefighter who rushed to the scene minutes after that attack started.
We know what this could have been, and we actually play that out in our heads before we even respond, what we potentially will be arriving on and seeing. And to come back to the station and just kind of exhale and understand that we got really lucky.
It was a thrill to watch parents come in and be able to give their kids a hug. And every single parent got that opportunity yesterday. And yeah, that was I couldn't have asked for a better experience in a role that I hope never have to fill again.
Definitely truly scary moments. Meanwhile, we spent some time this morning in Dearborn Heights outside of the home of the suspect. Neighbors there told me that there was an active crime scene, an active search taking place outside his home. There were tire tracks we saw in the grass. A window to the front window was boarded up. It is very clear that investigators are working very hard to find as much evidence as they can, both at the suspect's home, but also at the synagogue behind me that remains closed and remains an active crime scene. Got it?
Shaquille Brewster, thank you. And don't go anywhere. Coming up next, a woman allegedly steals an ambulance before ramming it into a building. The wild crash caught on camera. Plus, Cuba's president confirming that they're holding talks with the U.S. as Trump tightens its grip on the island's access to oil. What we are learning just ahead.
All right,
90 seconds? All right, cool. After the capture of Maduro, after what we are seeing is this Cuba. What we're seeing. This?
One minute.
Is this? Okay. All right. Hey guys. So sorry. Crazy stuff. We're going to be talking to Carlos Corbello about Cuba, and we're going to get into it. You know, there's oil shortages in Cuba. Those are directly related to what the United States did in Venezuela, and then it's also connected to Iran. So we're going to connect those dots in just a second. Hey, welcome back. Here are some of the other headlines we are watching tonight. TSA workers are among thousands of DHS employees that are going to miss their first full paycheck this week as that partial shutdown continues. That could not only cause safety concerns, but further travel delays. Democrats are pushing for changes to DHS immigration operations after 2 U.S. citizens were shot and killed by federal immigration officers. And new guidelines from the American Heart Association and other medical groups are advising doctors to start screening patients for high cholesterol in the 30s. Now, the guidelines are also recommending 2 new screening tests that could better reflect the risk of heart disease and abnormal levels of blood lipids in order to check for cholesterol testing. This is the first time since 2018 there's been a revamp to those guidelines. And newly released dashcam video shows the moments before an ambulance was driven into a building in Idaho last month. Police say The 46-year-old suspect, Sarah Elizabeth George, faces several charges, including malicious destruction of property. She has pleaded not guilty in connection with that crash. And UFC fighters, apparently they are headed to Quantico, according to the FBI Director Kash Patel. This is going to be the first ever FBI training session led by professional mixed martial artists, and it's going to take place this weekend at the FBI Academy. UFC CEO Dana White said he has tremendous respect for the FBI and that the organization is proud to support the FBI in strengthening their defense techniques. Also, the UFC has announced that they're going to issue 85,000 free tickets for a high-profile fight card at the White House. That is scheduled for October. There are also plans to stage several UFC bouts on June 14th on the White House South Lawn as part of the administration's celebration of the nation's 250th anniversary, and the date coincides with both Flag Day and President Trump's 80th birthday. Also, in a surprising speech today, Cuba's president confirming that the country is having talks with the United States. President Miguel Diaz-Canel saying that the purpose of the talks is to first identify bilateral issues and need solutions. He also confirmed that these talks are just in the initial phase. But these talks come as Cuba is in a dire situation because of fuel shortages that are causing blackouts in parts of the country. That's affecting water pumping, even delaying surgeries for tens of thousands of people. A fuel shortage is ongoing since December, when the country received its last shipment of oil, and before the capture of Nicolas Maduro, when President Trump blocked those oil shipments to Cuba. All of this aggravating an economic crisis on that island. So let's bring in NBC News political analyst Carlos Curbelo to talk a little bit more about this. Carlos, great to see you. So after the capture of Maduro, after what we are now seeing happen in Iran, is this just a sign that Cuba does not want any kinetic action happening on their island?
Well, Gadi, without a question, the Cuban regime is coming to the negotiating table from a position of weakness. This is not like the negotiation or the dialogue with the Obama administration about a decade ago, where the Obama administration wanted to change Cuba policy and Cuba offered to make some economic concessions to open up their economy a little bit. The Cuban regime is coming to the table because they are concerned. Their number one ally in the world, Venezuela, was taken out when Nicolas Maduro was apprehended by the United States. The oil shipments that they have been sending to Venezuela to Cuba for many years from Venezuela are no longer taking place, and they are running out of fuel. So, yes, Miguel Diaz-Canel came out this morning and said that they wanted to talk about topics of mutual interest, but without question, the Cubans have been forced to the table here, and they are going to look for ways to alleviate this crisis that the island is experiencing.
And they're real fast. We're seeing these oil shortages on the island. There are still some that have oil and are allowed to get oil, right? So you've got some in the private sector that are allowed to receive some of these shipments from the United States. And it's almost like two different power, competing centers of power in Cuba right now. If the talks go south, do you think that we could see something happen with those that are receiving the oil in Cuba right now? Do you think that they could mount some sort of challenge to the government?
Well, it's pretty clear what the United States has done here. They know that Cuba is dependent on other countries for oil, and the Cubans can't really buy oil because they don't have the resources to do that. Venezuela used to sell this oil at a discount or sometimes just give Cuba the oil. So what the United States has done now is stepped in and made the Cuban regime dependent on the United States for fuel, which obviously is critical to their economy, to the functioning of almost everything in Cuba. The power plants in Cuba, Gadi, rely on oil, unlike our plants that rely on natural gas. And obviously we've developed renewables here. That doesn't exist in Cuba, right? So they're highly dependent on the United States, and the United States is every day in a stronger position to kind of dictate who in Cuba is empowered, and those that get access to fuel, as you stated, clearly have the advantage there and have an interest in continuing to receive that fuel.
We also saw today the news, or today and yesterday, of the 51 prisoners that Cuba says it's going to free. How does that factor into all this?
So this is something that the Cuban regime has done almost since it took power 67 years ago, Gadi. For the Cuban regime, political prisoners are a currency, and they use them for leverage. They use them to win favor with governments like the Vatican. The Vatican is trying to help the Cubans negotiate some kind of resolution here with the United States. And what the Cuban regime does is they put people in prison, and then when they need to show that they are negotiating in goodwill, at least create that perception, they will release some of these prisoners. Now, it's 51 prisoners. There are well over 1,000 political prisoners in Cuba, so there are many more that were imprisoned back in July of 2021 when there were mass protests on the island. This is a tactic by the regime to try to win favor, try to do a little PR and show that they're taking some of the steps that the United States and other governments would like to see them take in terms of political reforms.
Yeah, but the number of prisoners still in jail, I mean, that is such important context. Carlos Curbelo, thank you so much. And coming up, where the investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance stands as the sheriff urges the public to remain on high alert there. All right, 90 seconds. Okay. All right, I think we've handled pretty much everything, and sorry I missed a million questions, I'm sure, here. Except from the constitutional Cuba, and I don't know if Cuba is going to become a state anytime soon, but who knows? I just wouldn't. I don't know. I mean, you'd think Puerto Rico would become a state before Cuba. Let's see. 1 minute. Yeah. Long way for the UFC for sure. That's a lot of people. That's going to be a huge audience. Just logistically, like that. What is that going to look like? Let's see. What else? Common thread. The common thread among these three countries is that economic sanctions have not worked for decades. That's a very, very valid point. Yeah. And they've been pretty consistent with, where they stand. We'll see what happens. 20? Are they going to hit the reserve? I don't know. Canada, another, I don't know. Here we go. Quick update on the Guthrie. Hey, welcome back. In Arizona, it has been 41 days since Nancy Guthrie was abducted from her home, and investigators are warning the public to stay on alert as the suspect in her disappearance is likely still out there. NBC's Liz Kreutz spoke to the sheriff and has the latest.
The search for answers into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance continues. Over the last week, so many people still showing up and showing their support for Savannah.
I've watched the Today Show for many years, and you become family.
We're not going to stop praying until we get an answer, and some closure.
Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos telling us they're still working to identify that masked man at Nancy's home.
Do you think that this suspect could strike again, whoever did this?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, criminal minds are criminal minds.
While he didn't disclose it, the sheriff says investigators do have a theory for a motive.
We believe we know why he did this, and we believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that. And so it'd be silly to tell people, yeah, don't worry about it. You're not his target. No, you could be.
He says investigators are still actively working their leads, including that unknown DNA.
Is there still hope that this mixed DNA will be able to be identified?
Absolutely. That's going to get us to somebody, we hope.
As the investigation goes on, an incredible outpouring of love for the Guthrie family.
It says, Nancy, all of us are praying for you to come home now.
Tucson artist Donna Prius, who goes by the name Pinky, has been leaving these canvas paintings outside Nancy's home.
Something they can save, something that they read And I think they'll feel it in their heart. I know Savannah will.
Yeah, we're all praying for her to come home. Liz Kreutz, thank you so much. And if you have any information that could help in the search for Nancy, you can call the tip line at 1-800-CALL the FBI. And coming up in the future of everything, Meta scoring a major deal, now owning social platforms for humans and for AI. More on that ahead. 90 seconds, okay. All right.
Position G.
90 seconds, and then how much time does that leave us with the Oracle? Todd? Yep. Okay, 4 minutes. We got 4 minutes with Jake Ward. Jake Ward is the smartest guy on tech that I've ever met in my entire life. If you guys aren't following him, he is just, his podcast is called The Rip Current. You should definitely follow it. It's like the most thought-provoking thing out there. So, Lobato Cat, delete your Meta. A lot of people have done that. Back to the question. No, I don't think so. I don't think Canada, I don't think Greenland, but I don't know. I'm not in charge of any of this stuff. I'm just trying to make sense of this world. All right, here we go. Let's see. Oh, thanks so much.
About 30.
Lean, here we go. Let's do this. I'm gonna put you right here. And then we got Jake Ward coming up.
20.
And tonight, in the future of everything, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, social media for us humans. But you might have also heard a whole lot of hype around something that was kind of described as social media, but no humans, just AI agents that, you know, like, just socialize with each other, I guess? Well, guess who just bought that entire thing? Yep, Meta. Now, the platform currently known as Moltbook has been going viral since it launched back in January. Meta now owns it. And back then, you remember, people were worried AI was doing weird things like starting its own religion. Kind of felt very Reddish, like Reddit-ish, like those long threads, but only for AI agents. And the website said humans were welcome to observe. But again, it was for AI agents. AI on there right now, even reacting to this Meta news. Look at these posts. One says, Meta just bought Moltbook. Here's why I'm not panicking yet. Meta can buy the platform. They can't buy what we've built on it. Not yet. Who owns our posts now? Our memory files. I don't know. Is that AI asking those questions? Is that just us looking at our shadows in some weird way? It is the type of stuff that really keeps me up at night. There is no one I'd rather talk to about it than the host of the Rip Current podcast, the most illuminating tech journalist I know, Jake Ward. Jake, so great to see you. By now, we all know that Meta has this track record of scooping in, buying whatever new cool kid there is on the tech block. Sometimes it's a bust. Other times, Zuckerberg's picking up something that changes everything, like Instagram. But is this a hype purchase, or is this an existential purchase? What do you think?
Well, Gotti, I really appreciate the kind words. Nice to see you again. And yeah, you know, I mean, certainly he can buy anything he wants, right? The guy can come along and throw, you know, God's own money at really anything he wants to. But this really fits the bill, right? These two guys, and it's just two guys who put this thing together, really have made something that I think Zuckerberg's been dreaming of for a long time. So you may recall that a while ago, he talked very openly about how Zuckerberg wanted to normalize the idea of digital friendship. And the whole purpose of renaming the company Meta, aside from maybe getting away from some brand name trouble, was because he wanted the metaverse, right? He wanted this alternative universe in which a projection of ourselves is out there. And so he's always dreamed, I think, of, I mean, I really like your term, shadow of ourselves. He's always wanted the shadows of ourselves to be available for his, you know, analysis, I would argue. And so in this case, that's really what this feels like. It's the perfect playground in which to see how the digital representation of somebody's preferences behave, but it's also, in theory, an amazing place if you're all about AI outputs to put a couple of agents together and get them to kick together whatever kinds of ideas they can. You're trying to figure out, can my agent and your agent shake hands and come up with a project that includes both of our finances or both of our health records or whatever it is, right? It could be a lab for coming up with new stuff. But I mean, one thing to just remember here, Gadi, is that these are by far the craziest people who put these agents out there, because in order to participate in this thing, you needed to give these things like phone numbers and email addresses and autonomy and access to your bank account and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so this is really the least sort of security-minded people turning their agents loose in this thing. And now all of that belongs to Meta here.
Yeah. I mean, what could go wrong? And, I don't know. Every time I think of agents talking to each other, I think of the paperclip paradox, right? Like the potential that all of a sudden, you get replication just for the sake of replication. So much of this and the unleashing of the agents makes me feel like we are quickly approaching that, and also maybe the dead internet singularity thing. Like we've already seen it on some social media platforms alongside all kinds of very viral video clips made by image generators. I gotta ask, what do you think the current human to bot ratio is on anything that we use these days?
I mean, it's really getting out of control, right? Because we're certainly, the whole point of this industry seems to be to make it as easy as possible for us to create anything we want to, right? And so the barrier to entry used to be you had to at least pick up a camera and have the courage to be on it in order to participate on social media. Now you don't even need that anymore. So I think that the ratio of bot to human is about to get way out of whack. Now, I think you've got a lot of people, Elon Musk took one look at Moldbook and was like, this is the beginning of the singularity. But I would point out, one thing that is worth noting here is that, the group that these two dudes are about to join at Meta are part of this new machine learning group, super intelligence group that's supposed to be building sort of the next AGI. But the other father of AI, a guy named Yann LeCun, who used to be the head of AI at Meta and previously at Facebook, he just left. And he left to start a new company because he doesn't believe that any of this stuff is going where these people claim. He doesn't believe that the singularity is the glide path we are on right now. And he's building a whole other kind of AI because he just thinks these LLMs are going to be kind of a dead end. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But I would just say, whether philosophically we think this stuff is the singularity or not, it sure is impersonating us well enough to be entertaining and a little bit funny and a little bit sexy in these weird ways that are, tickling the brain. And so I think the ratio of human to bot is undoubtedly about to get way out of whack here, Gadi.
Yeah. Well, when it does, we will be calling you first. Jake Ward, thank you so very much.
Sure, we'll ruin many parties together. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You too. Well, coming up, it is Oscars weekend, so we are breaking down what to expect and who people are right now thinking might come out on top. Yeah. Todd, we good on that one? Yo, what's up? Who is the host of this channel? I don't remember I subscribed to this channel. Said I'm a subscriber. Are you subscribed to NBC News? Because this is NBC News right now. Todd, we good? Good? Newborn, guess what? We're friends. No worries. All right, we are definitely friends. Yeah, the ratio is crazy.
It was 5 minutes.
Oh, it's 5 minutes? Okay, perfect. Let's see. Reed, he is my bro. I wish he was my bro. I wish he was my brother. I wish I could hang out with him all the time. He's like he's got this book called The Loop. You should read it. And he used to work here at NBC. In fact, he sat right across from me. And it was back before this whole crazy AI stuff, but he has his finger on the pulse in a way that no one else does. And so, again, his podcast is called The Rip Current, as in, that thing that takes you out to sea when you're out there surfing. Dude, that is what we are all experiencing right now without even understanding where this rip current is taking us. So if you get a chance, you should follow him. Tell me about your Yeah, we're going to do a Kalshi. Well, we're going to talk about Kalshi and Polymarket and all that stuff in the Oscar segment that we're doing. But here's the thing. It's already going. So what you have to do is you have to go to NBC News. All right, if you found this on YouTube, then you're a real one. But you got to go to YouTube. Then you got to go to. Right now, you're watching the multi-view, the cool one, right, where we can talk. But right now, if you go to NBC News, you will see this one. This is the end of the show. I haven't figured out how to route that into this because we pre-recorded that. It's a complicated thing, and we're working on it. We've got a genius here that is making all this stuff happen, but we don't know how to work it. So we're gonna try. Until then, we get to hang out at the beginning of the show, before the show, in the middle of the show, during commercial breaks, and then a little bit at the end of the show, and just chat here on TikTok, on YouTube, and I think on Twitch now. So Timmy or Michael B, Tina, I gotta go. Like, Michael B is great, and yes, he was 2 characters in Sinners, but he didn't fly like a blimp over my house multiple times with the kids coming out and looking at it. So I reluctantly, I'm going to put Michael B. Jordan down on my ballot because I think he's going to win because that's what the votes are going to say. But I really want Timmy to win. Let's see. We want to hear the complicated routing. We're watching the BTS. I don't even know. All I know is we're streaming on OBS, and we send things to what's called a NOC, and the NOC has trouble routing to our OBS and spitting it both out to YouTube and TikTok. So. Michael B, the news is bad, but thanks. Trish, it really, you don't have to watch, but if you do watch, we will try to inject a teeny tiny bit of optimism whenever we can. Chat at the end, aw, thanks. Love the setup, thanks. I like the hazardous version. What, did you just come up with like the best t-shirt for this show? That's basically our motto. We love the hazardous version. Let's see. Control room is in New York. NOC is in Denver. Gotti is in LA. Yeah, gets real complicated. Do I drink chocolate milk? Not anymore, but I did like it when I used to. What up, Harrison? Let's see. Martin thinks Timothy is gonna get it. Where we have bots everywhere on YouTube chat. No, I think the YouTube chat. I think these are. I recognize most of these people. Let's see, and I think we do need to go here. All right, yeah, OBS, you know how it is. Grand Rapids, Michigan, we'll see you later. Asta, everybody, thank you so much. Bye, Inwood, thanks for following, and we'll see you guys Monday. Have a good weekend.